Hi, welcome back to Future Fast. And once again, we have Bipin with us. And for those of you who have joined here for the first time or only for this episode, like many of you I know do, that you only join in for the future part of the conversation, I really urge you to look up two other parts of the conversation just because you will be able to connect his journey and then you'll be able to connect what he does with what conversation we're going to have and why he makes if we get him to make some predictions in this. So it's very important that you catch up with his journey and what he's doing currently so that you'll be able to connect with his perspective on the future in this. And if you're not subscribed to Future Fast, do it now. So with that, Bipin, once again, thank you so much for making time to be here with us. And once again, welcome to Future Fast.
Thank you for having me, Nanjendra. And like I think I've told you, some of these questions have been thought-provoking and made me self-introspect. So I hope it is, as much as useful to others, it's been very useful for me too.
Oh, wonderful. And I wanted to start today with a question. I hope not to put you in discomfort, but I think your products, your services, your offerings are like we actually talked about in the second part of the conversation, in the business side of it, that it is quite expensive. And you did say that over a period the prices will eventually come down. But clearly, like most things which are approached as good for the society, this also appears to be a prerogative of the rich. I mean, clearly, as of today, also, right? Good health is prerogative of the rich. So, from your perspective, eventually you said, but how far do you see that it becomes affordable for everybody? How do you see, or is there something else that you are working on that would actually bring this down? Or is it a factor of time?
So our costs right now are high because a set of processes down the value chain are expensive. India, internet became a fundamental right in 2020 by virtue of Article 19 or something. I've forgotten exactly, but I think it's Article 19. It's a fundamental right now. So it's not just roti, kapda, makan. It is roti, kapda, makan, and internet too. That shift has taken place. When did internet come to India? 1994, 95 maybe? Between around 1995. So let's say in 25 years from something having been introduced to becoming a fundamental right. And of course, in all of this largely because of how the mobile has become ubiquitous. If you recall, mobile calls were extremely expensive when it came. And it was also the prerogative of not just the rich, probably in some sense the really rich when it came in. That's an analogy to draw upon. At the same time, the SDG 3, which the UN is already after, good health and well-being for all, are all drivers of change in making health available, accessible, and in some sense, the ability to increase at least what we call and what we are working towards health span. How we do it, whether it is using different tools that people are going to build, all of that is what time will tell. That's how innovation happens. What we do is like I mentioned, because DNA sequencing is expensive. There are patents and IP that folks have invested in that need to turn around for some folks. These things I believe will eventually become. It will take the same route as internet and mobile has. On one hand, increasing volumes that come in for people wanting to do stuff will further drive it down. Our own thing where we say the DNA sequencing itself is an expensive proposition. So it will come down by half by the end of this year. Should make it more accessible to further number of people. So in another 2-3 years, I believe costs will go down by at least 2/3. And as in most businesses, it's a question of volumes driving down, volumes, interest. I don't know whether government policy will help in this to a large extent. Perhaps it will. I haven't looked closely at what the National Digital Health Mission is doing towards some of these, but they are building tools too to make health accessible. What is that? The remote e-Sanjeevani, as it is known as, to make doctors available by virtue of a remote access for videocon. These are all mechanisms in which it is driving down to rural areas, and rural areas themselves in India are becoming are going up the economic strata. So it's just a matter of time, and I would say the time in this sense would probably be faster. There are forces working towards this.
Well, Bipin, like always, there are two sides to it, right? See, one is that public infrastructure will always be driving us. They are the forces which drive costs to be made more affordable. But at the same time, see, you're a business and you're also looking, raise some money, you're also looking at attracting more investors. And the challenge will always be about increased profit over a period of time and not reduce profit. Of course, yes, you will try to play the volume game, but still there is going to be pressure because, see, if you look at it, even in the medicines pharma space, right, the generic space, the brands are so expensive. I mean, it's like crazily different. The difference is huge, right? Yes. Whatever that government did, that I don't remember, that government pharmacy. In fact, there is a lot of information spread across to undermine that you are not getting quality medicines there and all that. So I don't know the credence of the arguments involved in it, but overall the cost difference is significant. So in that sense, there will always be a pressure to keep up the price higher by bringing in more insights, perhaps more depth. So I think this is where the other day I was talking to a friend of mine that some of the features that latest cars today have, some small features, were available in Mercedes-Benz almost 15 years ago, 17 years ago. And it took almost so long. And even then, these features are available in the low-end cars, but they're premium versions. It's right. I mean, there is always some pressure to keep up some things and all that. So in that sense, I mean, it sounds really good if it is 2-3 years, but I really wish it is 2-3 years. But it looks like a much longer battle, and also, I mean, people like you who was a founder, entrepreneur, and your co-founders, perhaps will have to really fight for it with your investors to work towards keeping the cost low also, right? Because it also
even
will have
for us, and I'm talking only about from our perspective, which is gut health and personalized access to healthcare by studying the microbiome. If we don't increase, or rather, if we don't decrease costs and increase volumes, our business and volumes, if we don't reduce prices and increase users, we ourselves don't grow. So it is in our interest that we need to make it happen.
Correct. Yeah. So in this context, when you say that you have to also do that, and perhaps you will have to manage your investors to align in that interest, what are the things you see from a perspective of future? What are the things that will remain same? What will not change?
One of the things that we need to change, but I hope it will change, but as far as I see, it will remain unchanged, are people's attitudes. Right now, health, even though we say health, most people look at health only when they start losing health. They don't see health as something that they need to stay invested in, probably right from a young age enough to get to better health at the subsequent stage in life. I hope this will change, but I don't see it significantly changing anytime soon unless something dramatic happens. And this is probably inculcated in perhaps in early, at a really young age. And this has to happen at a global level, I would say. So if I have to pick up one thing, it is this.
Yeah. Well, I thought COVID did bring in many people to think more actively on this front. But maybe it may not
COVID
sustain.
is
I guess
gone
people will
in
start
most ways
forgetting.
from everybody's minds in every way possible. Yeah.
Right.
The remnants of COVID are far and few, and it is mostly in that these are some of these things that people don't ever want to do again.
Yeah. Well, there is one more thing. In fact, much of it is on the fiction side, in the science fiction books, and there are some web series talking about biohacking. But there are people actually also doing these things. So, how do you see? I mean, I think people always have done that, but only thing is they were more like experimenting with food and things like that. But now they are also trying to play with uh, uh, body as well. So, how do you see that one impacting your business, and two, how do you see overall that uh, evolving?
So biohacking is the practice of using science, technology, and lifestyle changes to optimize human biology and performance. Now, I think it's useful, but not sufficient. I would also go to the extent of saying that pretty much like a hack. It's something that you would do for a short term. I don't think it is sustainable per se. In fact, one of the self-styled fathers of biohacking is a gentleman called Dave Asprey. I mean, he himself did it because he was extremely overweight and had to do stuff. I mean, you should look up Dave Asprey's life story. But he's not a doctor but he doesn't have. I mean, in that sense, neither do we have medical training. We are going after it from different personal histories. I would say it needs more than just biohacking. If we need to live a good quality life, we need to live a life with what I said, health span earlier.
Right. But do you think the kind of technology, the deep tech that you're working with and all, do you think they could also be so low cost, or it someday in future will become accessible for people to tap into, biohack in their own rooms and such? I mean, do you think that is a future possibility?
So with what's happening, at least from a technology point of view, it is about making information available. That is one of the hallmarks of technology available to you, right? I mean, either through social media or through many other means. It could be looked at in both ways. Pretty much like how there is misinformation out there. There could be misinformation out there about some things like this too. So information is definitely going to be available. Can people do stuff with it? I'm sure that also. I mean, even today, you can go and get generics over the counter. There are enough supplements in the market. If you go to a supermarket in the US, I was shocked to see the first few aisles just stocked with supplements. So it is all there today, or rather, there is a lot available today. How you use it, what you can do with it. It'll only get more in the future. It's up to us to get to the right sources, right people, perhaps, and the right principles to use to do some of these. Yeah.
And do you think in future people will not be driven by misinformation? We'll perhaps have better technology to cancel out the fake news and fake narratives, and people will be or easily be able to, or this will always continue because everything in the current sense, there is so much that it's so difficult to declutter, right? I mean, there's so much of clutter.
Yeah. I think that's beyond the scope of just this conversation. It's a larger misinformation.
But that's going to be, I mean, it's going to affect your line of business primarily, right? Because I think that is one area where everybody makes a YouTube video or an Insta video talk about what's good for your gut.
Yeah, and that's why we are trying to make that create an edge. It is about creating trust. For us, one of the things that we are consciously after at Iom is about creating trust. I mean, and building trust with the customers, and it has to be backed by science. Make things open, publish papers. Make it available. But finally, it is all. If we can, at least from a company perspective, that's what we're trying to do with the whole brand building exercise. But ultimately, it is to do with the end consumer, right? Whether it is information that he or she believes in based on either there are self-style influencers out there, right? Several self-style influencers, especially in health and fintech. I mean, in health tech and fintech, which.
So that's another question then. So will you not be tapping into these influencers to promote your product? I mean that's been a traditional route also. No, product and brands actually engage the influencers. So
well, unfortunately or fortunately, at the moment we don't have the financial muscle to get to influencers, and the way these influencers are priced,
once you have money and your marketing team comes up and says we want to tap into all these influencers.
We do want to use influencers in some way.
Okay. Probably you will employ some your own filters then.
See, from an intent perspective, the intent is there, and we believe there is good intent and at least that is something that we look at and we say, should we get influencers? We should get the right influencer who believes in certain things. But they also say that the path to hell is paved with good intent. So it's a double-edged sword. We do want to work with influencers. I'm sure we will work with influencers in the future. Yeah, everything is a double-edged sword, unfortunately.
Right. So, Bipin, what do you see are the biggest changes that are happening in obviously in your field, right? What kind of changes do you foresee happening? I mean, you're welcome to talk about others also, but from you're actively thinking in this line, perhaps.
Yeah, I'll tell you what we are trying to do at Iom to help in some way to build the future, so to say. Number one, we are building these tools to accelerate science. We are building, and I hope that we can make some of these out there, some of these more public. The ability to create hypotheses. Right now, there are a lot of experiments. We have to do it in the experimental way. We would like to do more on the theoretical biology aspect. There are theoretical physics is where physics originally starts from, and then even some of the concepts that Einstein designed and the special theory relativity or the general theory relativity came about to actually being proven much later. Similarly, we need to build to have these capabilities, so to say, to make certain theories, make certain assumptions with a fairly high accuracy, the fairly high degree of calculation, speculation, so to say, mathematical abstractions. So we need more of such things. So that's something that we are after at Iom. We are looking at, and we hope this will help further down many others too. It's not just for us. It should help the larger community at stake. There is there is a lot of work happening in understanding the impact of different cells on different diseases. We have taken the onus of creating the ability, again using these tools and frameworks, metagenomic studies. We are doing the equivalent of what are called genome-wide association studies, which study the association of certain traits or conditions or illnesses with certain genes. We are doing the same thing with microbes, seeing the connection between certain microbes and certain traits. And of course, you need large studies to do so. So these are called metagenome-wide associated studies. So we're doing that. We are also doing what are called studying or understanding the networks or the social networks of microbes, and then seeing how that will transcend just individual microbes, the behavior of individual microbes, and be able to understand it at an ecosystem level. And these are all tools that we are trying to build, which will, like I said, help accelerate science, which will help accelerate discoveries. And I would believe there will be many more such happening.
Well, I had met a not-for-profit foundation who were making some nutrition supplements because they are trying to address India is one of the countries with significant malnutrition children, right? We still have a significant population. So they were trying to address it, and they were talking about their route would be to go with the government.
Sorry?
Go with the government, because government is also driving a lot of campaigns and spending on trying to address nutritional deficiency in the children. So see, from the line of business you're in today and the science, you clearly understand this generic approach will perhaps not help, but that is how, in fact, these people are making this product and trying to reach it across India. And government is also trying to roll out. I mean, like how the British brought wheat and tried to spread across India, and we have even Rava idli today because thanks to that. But so this blanket approach is what traditionally governments have been doing. So do you see an opportunity to work with government because they're anyway spending big money, and perhaps they will not achieve the desired success because of the obvious reasons, right? So do you see an opportunity in there to do things, or are you looking at it?
Significant opportunity. The National Institute of Nutrition, which kind of defines the nutrition levels or scales or measurements, we will talk to them to see how we can do this. This microbiome, this personalization at scale. It's not an easy problem to solve, and I don't think we have all the answers yet. It needs a lot of minds to do something like this, and I would probably use your platform to invite more folks to see how it is that we can and see, working with the government is one. We should have the right solution to do this. I do know there are institutions in the US working on public health systems using the microbiome, public health systems solutions at scale using the microbiome. Here in India, we are still to derive something to this effect.
And you are in conversation to explore these things as well.
So as a private institution that wants to do stuff, we are.
But how responsive have they been, the government agencies?
See, government agencies, by the very nature of how it is structured, their innate thing is to distrust private entities unless the private entities come up with freebies and things to do.
Recently I saw a picture and some media reports of Union Health Minister sitting with Bill Gates and the whole thing, and it was talking about your Indian health mission something. So I think it looks like they seem to be trusting a software man to talk about health, maybe because of his money, but still they seem to be open. So why do you see?
So that's a philanthropic effect, right? I mean, it's not a private institution. But having said that, I mean, I do believe the government, both in India and outside, several governments are actively working towards some of these areas. And it requires a lot of diplomacy. It requires what's the word that they use in the US? I'm forgetting.
Advocacy,
or lobbying.
Lobbying.
I think all of those words to put in all of those words together.
Okay.
Lies in all of them put together. It requires some effort.
So,
and it's not to say, I mean, like I said in my very first thing, I've worked with some phenomenal government folks, both in pure government. One of the folks that I really respect and admire is one of the deputy directors of the DOT, Sushil Kumar. Pamela, who was one of the DVGs of, they've been phenomenal people in trying to blend the government and industry and bring forth something useful. They've done a good job. I see that. I'm sure that'll happen across multiple industries. Sorry, multiple disciplines, multiple departments.
So, who, in your opinion, are the people who are really impacting in this space, India or globally? As of today, they are impacting and perhaps continue to in the future as well.
See, there are lots of people doing amazing stuff at a global level. Philanthropy in healthcare is happening unlike never before. All the folks, I mean, right from folks that want to do, I mean, all the top level folks, right from Bill Gates, as you mentioned, to Bill Gates is doing stuff. In fact, they did a lot of stuff on malaria, different vaccines. There is folks trying to extend lifespan. I mean, that's what Jeff Bezos and all are trying to do. There are folks trying to do other things like Elon Musk with Neuralink. So a lot of folks in the West are doing things out of their own interest to healthcare. And
anybody in India you can think of?
In India, there's a Center for Brain Research established in IISc. I'm forgetting by who. There is Ashok Sudha who's committed some amount of money for healthcare. But I think the larger change makers are the youth. If the youth of today can, and off late there's a lot of interest in biotech, for example. If the youth of India can be interested in bringing about or using some of these tools that people are building in just awareness, actually, I think we will have a larger number of change makers. The youth can be primed.
So
I don't have too much of an insight into people. At one sense, I would think at one level, I think there are far more people in India doing stuff at the grassroots. Even the folks that we work with at TDU are doing amazing stuff in taking things to the grassroots. And there are a lot of people doing.
What about the kind of product, the very space you're in, from the sense of gut? Are there people globally, anybody doing something like that, something working on those kind of things, and how are they? Any thoughts on that?
Well, the space has increasingly become hot. Just recently, I think less than 2 months ago, Jennifer Doudna, the lady who used to be credited with CRISPR, and therefore the Nobel Prize in 2020, 2021, I'm not Nobel Prize for Chemistry. She's just received a grant for editing microbes, microbiome, DNA.
Oh, you mentioned it in, I think, the first conversation or the second.
So there are lots of people working in the space. I hope we will be leaders.
Oh, that would be more on the research side. So there is nobody who's actually hit the market yet on this in the lines that you...
In India itself, there is competition. In the US, there is Biome. There is in the UK, there is Zoe. But
they are approaching. I mean, their approach is very similar to yours.
Yes. See, there is on the larger scale there is similarity. But from a business perspective, if there isn't a change or if there isn't some innovation that you bring forth, then why would you do it? So there are differences and there are similarities too.
So how do you see this? Is there a possibility of some kind of a collaborative effort between these kind of businesses in future?
I honestly believe there is absolute scope for collaboration with
There is?
every
Okay.
one of the companies that I've named. Partly because we have taken a niche. Everybody's
so you
taken
don't see it as a
a
competition?
massive no, see, the space is so big, and there's so and even though there are folks doing it, I think there is, and that's my personal opinion. That's why I said I think there are very few people addressing it. If the people addressing it don't collaborate, share information, probably even exchange markets, we won't grow.
So what would be your prediction on these things? And do you see collaborations actually will happen, or the human greed and wanting to be one up will stay there? Keep it away.
At least for some time, collaboration will happen. We ourselves are pushing for collaboration with some of the folks that we know. At least if I had to take the same telecom analogy, it's either collaboration or somebody eats somebody else.
Yeah, Bipin, while all the positives are there and well, it's very necessary, important, and good to do, at the same time, there seems to be a barrier of affordability here. This, as much as the necessity, it sounds more like it's like anything else in the health system, and much of the other good things that it's the prerogative of the rich. So, how do you propose to address that aspect of your pricing in this context?
Point, Manjunath. We can address it in two ways. One is the fact that the price point that we have now for the product, if it's gut sense or the other, it's the best in the world. I mean, you won't get a better service for this price. If you look at a competitor service which doesn't offer, a competitor product that doesn't offer as much, is priced much higher elsewhere, even in India. So it is. So if you look at value for the buck today, what we offer is among the best. Is the best, and that is, with certainty that I can say. The other is in terms of the overall price of the price points that are there today. While it is expensive, as with anything new that comes in, it steadily drops. The value of this becomes accepted. For example, I think I mentioned to you, when the internet came in, when mobiles came in, it was at a premium. It took 25 years. I mean, it came in about 1996, 95, 96. In the year 2000.
To India? Yeah.
Yeah.
Around, VSNL launched.
That's correct.
VSNL. 94, 95. Yeah.
Dial-up internet connection.
Yeah.
We needed a modem and all that. When it came in, I've forgotten the price, but you needed all that. But the point I'm getting to is that in 2020, the internet became a fundamental right. I mean, it was enshrined in Article 19. It became a fundamental right. So it's not just roti kapra makan. You had roti kapra makan and internet as something that every Indian had access to. Of course, the whole proliferation of mobile industry aided by several the business dynamics also helped. But that's the point. The business dynamics helped it to get to the stage. Volumes, when volumes increase, price points reduce too. So I'm assuming something like that will happen to this industry as well. That's.
So do you think that it's possible that as such, much of the healthcare is administered by government, right? Even in India, and in fact, even much of the Western countries, it is very much a government domain. So do you see a point in time where governments actually also offer this? I mean, from a point of reaching out to maybe, your product and your business will always be limited to those who can pay, while those who are dependent on this freebies or subsidized offerings and all. So government itself will be getting into it, or do you see your business actually partnering with government, where government pays for it and it goes free to the patient? I mean, what kind of a thing do you see going forward from a future perspective?
Yeah, quite contrary. In the future, in the futuristic perspective, this would become mainstream. I mean, analyzing the microbiome for what it is that you're trying as a means to providing a solution will become mainstream. Just recently, like perhaps this week, there was a paper published which actually spoke about that Alzheimer's and microbiome was connected was something that was known. It was just not known how and whether it was just a correlation. In the recent paper, the causal effect, saying that the microbiome actually causes Alzheimer's to some extent, came about. So where I'm getting to is in many illnesses, conditions, traits, it could be that just changing bacteria, to begin with gut bacteria, maybe a first step to health. You may not need to get to several other ways of solving it. This may be the first step to wellness. So governments, I'm sure, will embrace it. Public health systems.
No, that's what my question was. That on the next part of it, as in, like you just mentioned, also, right? Public health system will also embrace it. But I was just trying to ask whether you see your company, you being a service provider to government in that sense, or government will figure out ways of doing it that way. In the sense, government will pay you whatever is your price, and they will subsidize to the bottom of the pyramid, right? I mean, typically that's the way it is being done, right? All those government services, or even for that, I don't remember what terminology they use. The generic medicines have been offered on a subsidy, right? So there is the way government works. They really have to make it very affordable, which is not many of the businesses can sustain on its own. So they tend to subsidize it in these ways. So do you see yourself as a service provider to government, or do you see government will go in a different way? Because if it has to be the way forward, how do you see yourself a role for that? Do you see yourself partnering with governments in this?
So let me look at addressing the slide differently in terms of creating impact, larger volume, addressing offering solutions to the larger masses at hand. To everybody, for that matter, regardless of whether it is only somebody can afford it or not, and the affordability of it all. When Iom was set up, both my co-founders, Samik and Hiroaki, were quite clear that having done whatever they've done, a significant area that they wanted to address by virtue of Iom was impact, was delivering impact. And finding the right way to deliver impact, either by reducing costs, by increasing service delivery, by partnering with the government or any other NGO for that matter to make this more widespread. I think we'll certainly embrace it. It also makes commercial sense for that matter. If we can drive it down, taking it to larger number of people to solve it for a wider number of health conditions, we're certainly keen.
So, Bipin, it's time for the prediction. So, what would be your three predictions?
Three predictions. These predictions are not easy to make, and most often most people get it wrong. I'm just going with a shorter. Since I'm assuming these predictions are all hopeful project in the more optimistic sense. So under this one assumption, one of the first predictions that I see that's happening in the world around us is that people will live longer. People will live longer. People will live healthier. technology and science could possibly find cure for most human diseases. Earlier we spoke about how companies are working on diseases and cells, creating atlases of cells, lots of initiatives. All this will come to fruition, I'm sure, and we could end up with, most likely, like I said, people will live longer, healthier, because we find cures, because there is a greater understanding of the disease itself. So that's definitely one. Or two. To do all of this, there will be greater interdisciplinary science happening. It's not just about biology anymore, medicine anymore. It's about technology and biology and social science. So these different disciplines, fundamental disciplines, I think there'll be greater integration, intersection, and all of this will help accelerate some of these pieces.
So what are you trying to say is that even the education, the way it is being taught will change? Or, I'm just trying to understand the second part.
So I see, when you say education, one is creating awareness. The other is in certain areas, what is called capacity building. Both of this should happen. It's not just about awareness and capacity building. So that is possibly one facet. The other is the shift in how cures happen and therapy is provided. I think
so you said interdisciplinary efforts will increase. Yes. In that angle, I'm asking whether you will see that happening at an education level, or you will see that happening post-education at the time where people will come together to collaborate.
Both. See, when I say interdisciplinary, I'm talking about right from the agriculture piece, from the creating food, farming. There'll be greater understanding of maybe you can't do just organic and get away with it. There will be better ways to serve food, but better quality of food needs to be provided, not just in the traditional thing of organic. Understanding the impact of foods will change. Diets will change. There is now rethink on just how much of protein each person requires. Some of these what are called recommended daily allowances, dietary allowances on a daily basis, were done quite some time back. These will all change, and these will continue to evolve to a point where it affects the biology and medicine. And then there's the impact of technology coming in, where modeling of all this in silico simulation will help understand all this rather than going to actually trying out things on the field. Hypothesis generation gets better in silico. Then we'll be able to pick out one or two that we actually need to put into practice and try out on the ground. So I'm saying it'll be a combination of all of this. There needs to be greater understanding of longer, the whole social aspect needs to come into place too, and make and factor the jobs that pretty much people give away or don't do at the age of 50, 58, 60, 65. People can start working longer. This will then create, I think that is what I mean by interdisciplinary sciences. All of this is to come, right? Economics, it is social science, it is agriculture, it is technology in terms of strict computing technology. The electronics part needs to come in, data acquisition will get better. So all of these areas, I'm sure, is what I meant by the interdisciplinary nature of this will get better.
Right. But I'm just I think this is what is a very generalist approach, right? Trying to have a piece of everything to approach a holistic, finding a solution in a holistic manner. But when we look at each of these areas, the current trend has been that it is specialization in one. So somewhere, unless this changes at an academic level, it's very difficult to bring about that. I mean, this has been the challenge all through, right? For so long. Many of the solutions we could have found out, but they have discovered accidentally because somebody from some other domain happened to look into something else. So, of course, we don't, much of it is referred to as serendipity than accidents, but the future need not be so serendipitous, right? So it could actually be.
Yeah, I'm sure that those things will continue to happen, but it doesn't mean that the conscious efforts will also increase, and conscious efforts, directed efforts, will have there is a whole shift trust towards AI now, right? And we are now coming to accept silicon intelligence along with carbon intelligence, but at the same time, in the future, there will be boundaries on what we can get it to do, how much we can expect, whether we should go beyond just the whole generative predictive intelligence, which is purely non-emotional in nature, whether we should add emotion. When you add emotion, then the threats are, then anger is also an emotion. So will things like that come in and play a role? So education is one aspect, but we actually have to try out several of these newer areas of science.
Do you think AI will become the way the technology from a computer science has become? It's become horizontal, right? 30 years ago, it was a vertical, but today it has become horizontal for any science or any research or any effort. So do you think AI will become like that? I mean, like anyway, you're applying AI in healthcare and there is AI application in defense and all that. But will it be even approached in the same sense across the areas?
Certainly. I mean, I foresee it to be applied in I would really look at AI as a tool, as an enabler, like how we've started to use Word and several other tools. Word is one of the most easiest things for people to relate to. We get to using it in a way that complements and enhances what we do. So it will definitely be applied in several areas. The way it's going, each industry is trying to adopt and make use of it for its benefit, right?
Yeah, so, you at the core, you come from the technology space, so you do see sometimes the limitation of technology when it becomes a tool, right? For example, Excel. See, Excel is a fantastic application to do a lot of analysis, but by toolifying it, right, it is actually stymied its possibilities or what one can do. So somewhere, do you think by making AI a tool versus a technology, that will also happen even for AI?
See, in many ways, I may be oversimplifying AI. The present understanding of AI itself may be too simplistic. It could well extend and cross new boundaries, which is where most science fiction, into the realm of where science fiction talks. It could be the like what this gentleman said, Feynman said, or actually Oppenheimer said, it could be the end of worlds. It could be all of that. It's difficult to predict it in one way, but at the same time, it has several limitations. It's not to say that it's it is the apocalyptic in nature. It's going to create the apocalypse. No, there are several benefits that it can provide, as long as I think we learn how to deal with it. It's a completely new form of tooling, to use the word that you did.
Right. So you're obviously one of those proponents for AI rather than we need to keep AI.
I am completely a proponent for AI. Many as well. Yes.
So
and in ways to further our own requirements. If we didn't use, and see, the AI for us right now is a set of algorithms and a way of making sense of data and of creating different possibilities. So in all of these, if we followed conventional statistical methods, it would not have been feasible for us to generate these. What this does give us is an alternative to saying, hey, these are possibilities. Does it know enough to act on those possibilities? At the moment, no. Have we given it the abilities to act on those possibilities? No, we've not. Will somebody else do it? Possible. So, yeah, it's a long way off for the ethical use of AI. I may not even be the expert to talk about it. But we are creating. In fact, just yesterday we were with a council at NASSCOM and saying we should create this policy paper which the government of India can take forward. So maybe 6 months from now, I'll have a better answer on some of these questions.
Wonderful. So we'll perhaps get back again. What's the third prediction, Bipin?
Oh, I didn't even realize I'd given you two. I'm not sure. Two's good. I also see productivity increasing because of this, because of the use of AI. There is subject to deliberations on 70-hour work week. I completely concur with the 70-hour work week. If at least folks like we don't put in that, we just don't get to doing all that we want to. Possibly it will help us decrease the time spent on certain things. Possibly we can do more that same 70 hours.
Well, but one of the arguments for AI has been that AI will free up people so that they don't have to be doing the mundane or the work. They can engage themselves in creating things or doing things that makes them happy. So somewhere, I mean, you're saying productivity is more about doing more work, and you're also saying 70 hours. So how do you frame this argument?
Yeah, see, if I see more happening if I can do more in 50, 60 hours, I'll continue to do more. Then it's possibly a choice saying, hey, I don't now need to do this. I think ultimately it's about choices we make in terms of whether it's to do 70 hours, we do more in 70 hours, or more in 40 hours, or more in 50 hours. Those are choices.
Right. So, but overall, you think humanity is going to be more productive in that sense? That was your argument as a third prediction, or
Yes,
it's more of a fallout of the second one? Is that, I mean, I'm just saying.
In some sense, it is a fallout of the second one. We will also realize that there is this concept. I mean, taking this one step further, there is this concept of team leadership where you are really deep, where you get expertise in one area that is deep and narrow, and then you build the top level knowledge in several areas. And that helps you become a leader of sorts. So that I think we will have more such people, and that is what AI can enable people who have the motivation and the attitude to be able to get better at some of these top level areas. So when I say productivity increase, it's not just for a person, but you will probably have more people even at mid managerial level, maybe even at managerial levels, who can be equipped to become leaders of sorts, and by using these tools, by using technologies available. So that all that is possible in productivity. All that is what I mean by productivity.
So, anything else you want to add to specifically in terms of how you see the future of your own business? I mean, you will move. Where will you move from gut which way do you choose to move?
So we never restricted to ourselves to gut. Gut was an entry. See, gut was one entry point. When you start something new, you have to have one focus area, take away everything else.
Correct.
What's called unbundling, and then once you get some level of expertise in that and create a niche, create the market, then you start bundling. So gut for us was a dedicated differentiator to make a really successful, impactful solution. For us, it is the microbiome, and bacteria exist everywhere. Subsequently, we do intend getting into the skin. If you have to look at another area, even using gut into several health areas, post cancer care, post cardiac surgery care. How can we improve health for people who have gone through some of these totally horrible conditions, and how can we help them get better? Those are all areas that we're focusing on next. Biotherapeutics is another. Biotherapeutics using the microbiome, using bacterial metabolites is another. So we think we can cover the spectrum of human health, and not just that from the gut, but also skin and other areas. When you look at longevity, skin wrinkling is a huge area, and some of these apparently can be controlled by both skin and gut bacteria. Impacted by control, perhaps is a strong word. Can be impacted by skin and gut bacteria.
So your roadmap is next to skin, and then perhaps treatment of patients recovering from cancer. Is that how you put it, or?
A lot of this happens in the gut itself, through the gut, extended from the gut. So the areas that can come out of that is what we do next before going to the skin.
Oh yeah, someone told me even the color of your hair is about how much of and what kind of food you digest. So whether in gray. So you're saying you'll keep pulling thread out of guts itself to address every part of the human body.
Yeah, we maximize what we can do. That's what our shareholders expect from us. So we definitely do that. Also because we can leverage the science that is there. And I think I mentioned that before. We are in a unique position to do certain things because of our experiences and the way we look at things. We will flag that to the maximum.
Right. And what degree of personalization do you see in future? I mean, I was actually thinking you'll talk something about personalization as one of the things that's pretty fun. So I thought I'll make it a question.
Thank you for bringing that up. See, you can't achieve that level of curing illnesses, health span without becoming hyper personal. Personal is, even now, to a large degree, there is medicine that certain people get, certain combinations. I think that can just become even more personal. To even dosages and all that, to materials, to maybe things that are used to package medicines. So it will be hyper personal.
But by what point of time do you see that?
By what point of time do I see that? No, that's a difficult one to answer. And it's a difficult one to answer partly because we ourselves are doing some things now. But if I were to take that to scale, I see the difficulties in it today. But in some sense, the statement that is often made, right, that we always overestimate what happens in 2 years and underestimate what happens in 10 years. In 10 years, we could have some of these things prevalent. At this stage, so I wouldn't go out and give out a time saying by this time, but definitely within the next 1 or 2, definitely in the next 2 decades.
Okay. So when you say 2 decades, it's the personalization reaching every spectrum of citizens, right? I mean, if you have to look at it from a cost point of reaching probably the rich can afford it in the 5 years from today, but right? By 20 years, pretty much the whole population.
Society as well as at different health levels.
Right. Okay.
But correct. It will engulf larger volume of society and greater health aspects.
Perfect. Okay. So, Bipin, is there any shout out to from a future point of view? You want to give a shout out to what people should perhaps start looking at or work towards? Do you have anything that you want to, as a closing remark, I just wanted to ask if you want to give any shout out on this future fight?
If there was one shout out, I'd encourage anybody, I mean, even people that you have have had on your podcast, people who you've been talking to, who've been listening to these, to come in and have a discussion and see what is it that we can do collaboratively. The future is definitely about collaboration. It is about, evolutionary wise, they say communication is what led to the greater development of society. I look forward to hearing from people to collaborate.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And once again, to the audience and listeners, you heard him. The links are right below this podcast. Do reach out. And if you want any particular introduction in any context, I'd be happy to do that. But you're welcome to directly reach out to him as well. And also the link to the company that he runs and his social handles are also there. So do follow the kind of work that is happening. And please share it with all the people you think will appreciate this. And if you're not yet subscribed to Future Path, do it now. Until we meet again, enjoy the ride. Bipin, once again, thank you so much for being with us. And I know it's always like putting the neck out to make a prediction, but thank you for doing that.
Thank you for having me, Ranjana. It's been a pleasure. Like I mentioned earlier, helped me introspect about a bunch of things, some of these conversations, some of these questions, and this conversation.
Thank you.